we have a government that is starting to take action. Today, we're here to talk about digitalization. Oswald, I was starting to intimate earlier, COVID gave us a chance to increase some of our digital capacity. Have we continued to develop since COVID, the pressures of COVID abated? And how much further do we need to go to so that we can say that we have a digitized economy where young people are able to find jobs that are on the internet, digital, and actually building and solving problems?
Yeah, so I think we were having a chat last week, and I was talking about how state lines are being blurred because digitalization across the world is actually causing people to live and work in places that they are not physically present in.
Right.
And then we ask ourselves, what are the tax implications of things like that? And now we need to actually take active efforts to get ahead in the digitalization race. We need to think of it like a World Cup. It's a race across the world that everybody needs to. Before COVID, some initiatives were ongoing. I think that one of the biggest digitalization projects that this government has done, which is very laudable, is the National ID project. And it has such a ripple effect that once we start to reap the benefits of it, we would see the impact. But it's not easy to see the impact now. But one thing that characterizes a lot of the things that we do as Ghanaians and maybe as the government is we do things at the foundation level, raise it a little, and then it stays there for like 10 years.
Right.
And we don't follow through to get to the point where we reap the benefits fully. Now, when you consider the National ID project, the passport digitalization project, the SIM registration projects, amongst other things, these things have actually accelerated the foundation for improving the economic situation. And digitalization has a direct effect on the economy, because basically using digital technology allows you to do things faster. That's the first thing. So you gain speed. It allows you to do things cheaper. I mean, less expensive than it would normally be. Sometimes 10% of the previous cost that you were using when you're using a physical means. It also allows you to scale faster. And so these are basically things that contribute to economies of scale, contribute to business,
Let me just add, I don't mean to interrupt you, but let me add an important other advantage of digitalization. It improves transparency and accountability in transactions. I mean, that's why this government has done paperless ports, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
It's harder to bribe and cut corners when you're using digital. Please go on.
Yeah. So the transparency part is probably the best part. And I would argue that because of the amount of transparency it brings in, that also contributes to why it's being rolled out so slowly. Because I mean,
I was not expecting you to say that.
But that's true.
Yeah,
When
it's a
you
fact.
think about it,
It's digitalization projects are basically like pulling the rug out of certain people's feet, below certain people's feet. And so, I mean, that's how the world works, right? You transition into things. Things don't just take over. Yeah. That's how things progress. We should focus on getting the things running quickly and well enough. Now, I was talking about the fact that you're saying transparency. It also prevents the challenges, previous problems that you were having. For example, let's say that this show is automated, and usually we are supposed to finish in an hour, and then we decide to do it for an hour and 30 minutes or something. If the system is automated, by the time it's 1 hour, we are locked out. The sound is off. It goes to a different program. The system enforces compliance. Right. So we need systems that enforce compliance. And this is one of the advantages that digitalization brings into the country. We've done a lot of projects through the passport process. You are able to go and apply for a passport, and then you get it. The national ID allows you access to certain services. You know, one interesting thing about the national ID, the Student Loan Trust Fund recently launched the no guarantor policy. Previously, for a student to obtain credit from the Student Loan Trust Fund, you would need to get a guarantor assigned to the Social Security Scheme, amongst other things. Now, because of the Ghana card, you don't need a guarantor. Right. And the applications can be processed much faster. You don't need to be asked a lot of information and things. So there's digitalization going on. I personally, because I I'm heavily involved in digitalization, both in the private and then the government aspect. I see what is happening. So it's happening, and we just need to accelerate it.
So, in terms of where we are, in terms of the foundations that we need to build on, where have we got to? We've got a national ID card. We have digital addressing. We've got passports, digitalized passports. We've got automation coming in with tax collection and even personal taxes. What else? What else? I mean, there's been a number of different areas that this government has attempted to digitalize.
Yeah.
In terms of progress, with 2 years left, can they claim success? Have they moved us far enough ahead based on their expectations?
So that's very interesting. The fact that a government will have to claim the success for a project is one of the things that hampers our progress in this country.
Amazing.
Because I will always say that the solutions that we need are long-term solutions. There are things that take 10 years to do.
Right.
The National ID project has taken like 10 years or more.
And it's gone through multiple governments to get it done.
Multiple parties.
Right. It was the last government who passed the law that
Exactly.
actually brought the ID
Yes.
through. Okay.
And so you see that such a solution, once it's carried out, we reap the benefits of it after 10 years. But because things have to be done in a certain way for the government to sort of like claim that, okay, we did this and this person didn't do that, and the other one comes and says this or might not continue the project.
Yeah.
These are the things that hamper our digitalization.
Right.
Now, for certain critical things, we need to take out this mindset totally as a people, as a government, and ensure that we would not say, oh, this party came in and then did a national ID, and then the next party came in and then, because we are seeing the benefits with the next party, we would say that, oh, they are the ones who actually brought the benefits out of it. It's something that we need to change mentally, and we need to look at in a different way. Now, when you consider the national ID,
That's
like
what
this,
is asking for the impossible. But go on, you go on.
no, but I think that a lot of people are actually thinking about these kind of things now, because
Look, a lot of people are. All of us are, but not the politicians. But you go on.
no, so it's like.
So what's super interesting for me is that there is a growing movement of young people, right? The very same young people who are going to take the reins with digitalization, or are taking the reins with digitalization, and who are going to get jobs from it, etc. They're the ones who are now standing up and saying this adversarial two-party politics is not working for us.
But they are not the guys who are going to take political power. I don't want us to digress from digitalization, but let me just. You see, I know I tend to sound very cynical, but this is the truth. I have a friend. He's my son's friend actually. Mm-hmm. Young boy, is assemblyman, all right, in my area, and he comes to me. I help him design proposals, and I give him ideas about how to get the companies around my area to do CSR. Mm-hmm. Okay, mm-hmm. for the community, like Kingdom Books, try to get them to do some internships, so the young guys can get some work experience. Right. And I help him a lot. And the other day I was telling him that, I'm really impressed with his drive or what he's trying to do. That I see him as the future of Ghana in terms of political class, governance and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he told me that, hey, look, he's planning to leave politics. This guy he's in his early 30s. He says he's planning to leave. I said, why? And he tells me, look, the guys above him, the guys in the party where he is and everything, they don't bother with people like him.
Right.
They are mentoring the guys who
take
adopt
over
the adversarial politics,
right.
The ones who are ready to shoot at the other party. Because that's the way to get power. That's what the old guys think. So the old guys are adopting people who think like them. And these new guys, like if Oswald went to go join one of these parties now, they want to sideline him because they feel that he's doing things for his country, but not for the party. And for the old school politicians, the guys who are selected people coming up next, what their interest is what you can do for the party, not what you can do for the country.
Right. So,
yeah, I mean,
how'd you come back to that?
Yeah, let me just add a little to what he's saying. It's true when it comes to the decision-making power. So there are different categories of power, right? But when you actually look at in the political parties, even in the government, like when they call young people future leaders, I don't believe it. I believe that young people are running the world right now. We are using the technology that we are using. It's being run. The social media is built by young people. Everything else is being done by young people. I've worked in some of the big organizations in this country. It's the young people who run the show. The decision-making power, however, rests with the older generation who may be thinking about things in a certain way, and the younger people with the new, fresh ideas which may change things might not have that decision power yet. But the thing is, Africa has a very youthful population, and we are looking at like 73% youth. And then in the next 30 years, we are going to have about half of all the young people in the world in Africa. And so we will reach a critical mass. It might not be today, it might not be in 5 years, it might not be in 10, but a critical mass would certainly be achieved. And now, because of the nature of information technology, digitalization like this, and solutions, social media and other things, you see that the ideas are spreading very quickly. The patterns of thinking are changing. And when you look at the last election we have, compared to the penultimate one, you can see that there's a difference in the thinking, a difference in the voting patterns. Some people voted for the president on one party, and then voted for
the party on
the MP on a different party. We're seeing these patterns. You see the narratives on social media. You even see at the end of the day, the reports that came out of the social media companies, they actually talked about how much the political party spent. And you can see the amounts that they spent on social media advertising. Social media drives the narratives. Something comes up on social media, it gets picked up, it spreads across the country. People are moving, look at Fix the Country and things like that. So I think that's why the topic we are discussing today is important, because digitalization changes everything. It's like it's a spice that once you put in, it changes whatever has been the status quo. It changes the status quo completely. That's why we need to pay a lot of attention to it. And like I said, one thing about digitalization is you can build the rules into the system so that the rules don't depend on humans. I may have decision-making power, but if a rule that promotes democracy or fairness or distribution of services in a certain way is built into a system, then I cannot use my arbitrary decision power, or my discretionary decision power, to take a decision that does not comply with that. And young people are the ones building this system.
So let's pause there for a minute, because obviously with all digitalization, with data, there are huge considerations that need to be made for security, for privacy, for systems integrity. Where are we in terms of our ability to trust the soundness of these systems? And how well can we trust the government to use our data and to use these systems in leadership in a fair and transparent and non-manipulative way?
So the thing about technology is that you can audit it, and anybody can audit technology. So if there's an online voting system that's going to be used by a group, like, it can be audited by any professional who understands technology systems. Now, the thing is, who has access to audit it? And it all boils down to the fact that there are certain people who have decision-making power who may prevent certain things from being done. However, when you look at trust in government systems, it's a different situation from efficacy of those government systems. It's a different discussion from the output of those systems, from the speed and then all these other factors that come in when you introduce the system. We might settle on trusting the result of the system. I know, and I always cite from social media because that's where you see people from all over talking about the same thing. When people say, look, if you want to do a passport, just go online and apply. Someone said, I'm looking for someone to help me do a passport. They're like, just go online and apply. That shows trust for the system, the digital system that the government has put in place. As to whether certain things that have to do with selection are free and fair, I would not say that there's a lot of trust as to the aspects where there's still discretionary decision-making. But for the ones where you can see the system following a certain pattern and following certain rules that have been programmed in, we do have some trust for those systems. And that's why we keep calling for more of them. So that's why the digitalization going around, like the digital addressing system like this, it has solved a lot of problems. But it's been so long. Personally, I see that it's been so long, like we haven't yet reaped the full benefit of it.
Right.
But I heard some information about certain things being done to connect it to Google and all that, which is actually really good. Because instead of putting in a whole address, you could just put in a digital address into any application that's being built. That means anybody building any software anywhere in the world can take advantage of the digital address that government has put in place. And I mean, that's why we have some sort of trust in these systems, and we want more of them to come out.
Thomas, last week, Twitter, since we're talking about technology and technology companies, last week, Twitter announced that it was going to fire half of its workforce, unceremoniously dumped all of its African team, which was based in Accra, sent them an email, told them 1st of September is the end of your job, and offered them no severance, and some people say they broke Ghanaian employment laws, etc. When part of the digitalization drive has been to bring in big digital companies like Google, Microsoft to Africa, Twitter, etc. Digitalization, of course, is about how government processes, etc., go onto online. But specifically speaking about Twitter, speaking about employment laws, and making sure that as we digitalize, we also ensure we're still looking after the interest of the people.
Twitter's case is not the problem at Twitter. Did not come from digitalization as a concept.
Yes.
It was an operating mode. It just came from a change of ownership.
Yes.
I mean, somebody comes in, he looks at the bottom line and feels that he needs to change some things. It's not that what Twitter is doing here is wrong or something. In fact, I believe that eventually the Twitter will build back part of its human resource base in Ghana. That's what I think.
Do you think that there's a missed opportunity here for us to ensure that these big corporations who come, who are so keen to take our highly talented, excessively talented young workers, to force them to treat our labor more fairly? Perhaps guarantee wages, perhaps guarantee severance, etc.
Well, look, there's been a lot, and I'm sure Oswald will confirm this because he's in the industry. But as a financial reporter, I've followed a lot of some of these things happening. You know, Ghanaians set up like a fintech or something, young guys, and somebody in America finds out, buys the company, buys majority shares, leaves the management in place with some minority shareholding, and lets them keep running it. But now they supply the resources, whatever technological backup they have to accelerate their growth in profitability. And it's been going on without real complaints. I mean, SMS Ghana became Hubtel, for instance. We've not heard about any scandals or people being kicked out, like what's happened at Twitter or anything like that. All right. But you see, one problem we have in accepting digitization is that somewhere along the way, we expect it to be computer perfect. The way a computer will always calculate something and get it exactly correct, we think that the entire system has to be exactly perfect. And when something goes wrong, like there are job layoffs and stuff like that, then it's a failure of digitization. It's not. That is simple business. Before digitization came into our society, into our economy, people were getting laid off. All right? People were making money. And another thing you have to remember is that it's human beings that will program the computers they're going to use for digitization. Human fallibility will always show its ugly head one way or the other, no matter how much you computerize. Let's not blame the computer for the human being who programmed it in a particular way, because he still wants to have some space to, as Oswald said, he doesn't want the rug pulled out from under his feet.
So, I mean, in Twitter's case, what I'm really driving at is whether there could have been an opportunity to put in protections and to set a precedent for the type of protections that young Ghanaian technology workers should have. So, for example, in many jurisdictions, the workers get 6 months, or they get 2 months for every year that they've worked, or they get 1 month for every year that they've worked, or there's
What were the
or a
terms?
minimum
Are
of
you aware
3
of the
months.
terms they gave for the Twitter, the sack?
All I know is that there was no severance, and that they were told
No severance.
there was no severance, and they were
So
told
that's
that
illegal.
the last day of work was the 1st of December.
So
That's why
that's illegal.
a group of lawyers are
yes.
choosing
I
to
mean,
take them to work.
and Twitter will not. I don't think Twitter will get away with it.
Right. Okay.
If they
That's
do,
the
look,
question
if
I'm asking.
they do
really.
get away with it,
Right.
if they do get away with it, that will be a case of human fallibility. I will say it on air. Look, if they get away with it, it means there's some people who should have stopped it, have been bribed, and they have refused to do their work. It's as simple as that. Because the law is clear on this thing. But the human fallibility will be there. It is possible that they will be bribed.
Right.
And it's possible that because they were bribed, they don't do their work. Don't now blame digitization. Blame human beings implementing it.
Oswald?
Yeah, it's a very interesting conversation. I mean, I probably got so immersed listening to the submissions, but this is why I always say that the state lines are being blurred. If I live in Ghana and I work for a US company according to US timing and remotely, of course, and I consume US content, I watch Netflix, I subscribe to HBO, I just consume US services and all of that. It's almost as if I'm a US citizen. Like I start to probably lose my Ghanaian.
Culturally.
Now imagine that 90% of Ghanaians do that. Does Ghana still maintain its integrity as a sovereign state to some degree?
It's very much one of the major problems we're facing right now.
Exactly.
In every sector.
Exactly. So digitalization is basically creating a socio-economic, political divide. I mean, it's actually blurring the lines, which help us to maintain our integrity as a state. It's something which is why it's an emergency. And whenever I speak about it, I speak of it as an emergency. There will be no country like Ghana in the practical sense if everything that we do, we live, we work, we communicate. Look at our communications.
Oswald,
our communications
sacrifice our shoulders for suits and ties, savvy road ties, long before digitization came into the world.
Okay, but Toma, I hear your argument. Toma, I hear your argument.
Don't blame digitization for human
we're
feelings.
no one is not seeking to blame digitalization. What we're trying to do is ensure that protections are put in place. The issue with digitalization is that as you automate, as you've all said, you ultimately have to face human fallibility. That means that ultimately you're going to end up with some systems and processes which are not in our interest. As we develop and we move further down this pathway, because it becomes the world starts to move so much faster, and everything is so much more certain and with less discretion. It's important that we put these protections in now.
I agree to that.
That's
what you mean.
That's what I mean. Rather than
you guys mean, I accept that.
Yeah.
Yes, which is why we need to move faster in digitalizing. The way we communicate everything. So basically, in certain countries, they've blocked WhatsApp calling and Instagram calling and all of that because it cannot be controlled within the local context.
Right.
So right now, let's say I make a call. It's on WhatsApp. It's end-to-end encrypted. Everything goes through WhatsApp service in another part of the world. And so what does the Ministry of Communications have to do with that in this sense?
Very little.
I mean, whatever regulation is governing the call I am making is certainly not Ghanaian.
Right.
So that's why we need to really look at these things. And we talked about the startups and how we start companies here, they get taken over by organizations outside. It happens a lot. And one of the reasons is because there's very little to no capital in the country. Certain initiatives have been put in place, like helping startup founders or young people start companies under 35 to get a tax break for up to 5 years. That's a really good initiative on the tax end. There should be initiatives like that on the capital end, especially in terms of interest rates with loans. The companies that made it ahead took huge bets and took huge risks with what they had. In certain companies, the winners were even picked. They picked winners. They say, look, this is a company that has a solution that can scale across Africa or the world or in other places. And then they put certain measures in place for that particular company to grow. Look at Tesla.
When you say, when you say they, I think they picked.
I mean the governments.
In the developed world where markets are not really free, where where we take money from DARPA and give it to Google.
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's what is done to get ahead.
so how do we do that in Ghana? Because we don't have capital, we don't have credit creation, we don't. Other than going and getting money from some U.S. equity holders,
We
Yeah,
have
so-
it.
and
See,
that's another question I want to ask. Don't you
we
think-
have it. We have the capital.
okay,
Our challenge in Ghana with credit is the risk involved, is the amount of risk. And there's a lot of capital that is interested in coming in here. It's the risk.
what's the risk?
It's the risk,
Risk
the
of
repayment
default.
risk, the risk of default. It's very risky to engage in credit business here, which is why the national ID is such a really interesting project, very important project, because now you can use one ID to track a person across all financial services, which actually means that when the person takes your money, if they don't even come back to your bank, if they show up at another bank somewhere, then you find them. The credit bureaus that came in to solve all of these things are issues. And let me even share with you that based on this kind of information, like my company has built a solution that analyzes your credit in less than 30 seconds
Using what data?
from multiple. Yeah, so I mean, it's a different conversation altogether.
Okay. We'll
So
come back to it.
when a person appears before you, previously you probably have to write a letter to their employer, find out who they are. Are you sure this person works here? Then you check, oh, is this their address? Is this really their address? Is this, you have to do all kinds of verifications that may take a week or 2 or 3. And then so the turnaround time for actually obtaining a loan will be very long. And now this is a solution that basically does all this
Within
even
30
before
seconds.
the person gets to you. So once you ask the person for their name and they approve for you to have access to their credit profile, you get it instantly.
Wow. For
And-
every Ghanaian.
Yeah. So it changes the game, right? Because now the risk, people will be willing to lend. And also because you would also be on the system with the transactions and everything I do going forward, you can't really disappear. Like when people take monies and they don't repay, and then maybe they've taken money here, they go here, and the people can't really find out fast enough, and then it changes
They take
everything.
too much risk on.
So the issue is the risk of giving out credit, the default risk. Once the risk is very low, there is capital available in the country. And I've heard a lot of CEOs of credit agencies talk about this challenge, about the issue of the absence of a borrower's register and amongst other things, limiting the credit that they can give. And
but there is. That is
And even external ones.
The Bank of Ghana has the collateral registry.
that's the collateral one. And I mean, there's more that needs to be done on that front to tie it up. So the Ghana card alone doesn't solve the problem. And there were a lot of, recently there was a trend where people, I think His Excellency, the Vice President said, the Ghana card, you choose it over 1,000 interchanges, which was a very interesting statement for me. Honestly, I totally agree. I'll do the same. I'll choose the Ghana card over 1,000 interchanges. But not the Ghana card. So people will be like,
It's a lot of money,
hey,
isn't
can I pay for my transportation with my Ghana card? It's, you see, we are thinking about it at the low level. I have just the card. But what does that card mean? That card means that when I walk to a place, they know me. And because they know me, they can provide me with certain services that they previously wouldn't have been okay with providing to me. That means now I can walk into a retail shop and then buy something and say I'll pay over 12 months and just give them my Ghana card
Game
number.
changer. Credit created.
Exactly. And just give them my Ghana card number. And I'll collect the items and then go. And even if I default, I will not disappear off the system because banks and everything is being linked.
Everyone is
That
connected.
one
Everything
is
is
combined. That one
connected.
combined with digital addressing. You see, that's why this
Exactly.
government, the first thing they did when it came to power was the digital addressing system. I remember the political opposition were going on about what the thing does and how much the contract was worth. It was so key. The digital addressing system is absolutely key because, like what Oswald was talking about, without that, the Ghana card itself would have limited use. Because the thing is that with the Ghana card attached, when it's linked up to the digital addressing system, they can trace you to where they are, where you are. You see, UT Bank, the one that the card that had the license revoked in 2017. I remember my bank used to tell me that when they started, why they were so successful with lending to the informal sector was they were the first guys to realize that when you're going to lend to somebody, you have to get the person's address. And they were, Ghana, until we didn't really have addresses. We didn't have street names. So if you're a credit officer with unique trust, when you're going to assess, we're going to do a credit assessment, you have to follow the guy to his house and you draw a map. Take you to where the person
Oh
lives.
my God.
You know when you used to have to draw the map when you
Oh,
open
yeah,
a bank account.
I went to open an account and they asked me to draw the map and I said I won't draw it. I refuse to draw it because if you have my digital address,
Then why do
You know, that's
you
because you have a digital address now, but remember back then, we're talking about, I mean, when the unique, that time was called unique trust. That was what? That was about.
we still
30
draw
years
the
ago.
address now. We
You still
still
do it
draw
now?
the address now.
With the digital address.
Now, yes, the people still draw the road.
That
to
means
the-
that there are problems with the digital address.
So this is exactly what I'm talking about. It's not just that now there is a digital address
so
system.
you know where everyone is?
That gives you almost nothing.
Right.
It's how do services connect to it?
Right.
How do we use it? If I have an app somewhere and somebody puts a digital address into my app, am I able to resolve the person's location? Is there a reverse lookup? If somebody gives me their location, can I generate their digital address? How do services connect to the address? This is what actually yields the results of digitalization and these things that we've built. And so until we get to that phase where we are accelerating on opening up these services, allowing for services to connect, external services to connect to them, we won't reap the benefits.
Is that not what they are supposed to be doing?
Yeah. So I mean, there's the fintech area is
Huge,
is
right?
huge. So now, let me say this here: a lot of the government institutions are very closed, possessive of their information,
Their
their
IP.
service, and their data. And as long as that is the case, we would never reap the benefits of those solutions.
Right.
It will never happen. It will just be something we've spent money on, we've done, and we'll say we
Simple
have,
example
but
of
we won't have the
what
benefits.
he's saying. Example of what he's saying. Let me just confirm it. Recently, I was doing a project with somebody. We needed to send a proposal to Petroleum Commission. You know, we were sending it to several government agencies. And when it got to Petroleum Commission, we now called them by phone and said they should give us an email address we should send the proposal to. They made it clear to us that they don't take proposals like that in digital form.
You have to
You
bring
have
in
to bring
paper,
it physical.
put it in an
And we're
envelope.
like, what? But that's what we had to do
You have to do
eventually. But it's silly.
There's just no processes that can be audited that are in place, right? So I have a bit of a funny question. Since you were talking earlier about government divisions and their protectiveness over their IP, etc. When they were doing the digital addressing, I hear that there were two different companies in competition, and that there's some, I don't know the full details, but there's some disagreement over whether or not IP was stolen from one of the companies, and that company should have been rewarded, and it wasn't. And that's often the case with government-related projects where the technology guys don't want to work because they're worried that the technology might be stolen and they don't get money for it. And this is something that apparently has happened to across more than one government. Or two, they're worried that basically they are not in fair competition and that they'll go into competition, but then there'll be a political driver of the decision, and they've just given away. So they don't even open the doors to get involved.
Exactly what I'm saying. Don't blame technology for the human feeling. These are human feelings.
Yeah, so we need to deal with things like that so that we can actually allow technology to have the benefits that it comes with. And I've seen that happen a lot of times. A lot of people have complained to me. I went to see this person about my project. 2 months later, I saw an announcement that the project was being implemented. And the specification was literally almost the same as what I gave to them, but I've been excluded. And this happens a lot.
Why does that
And
happen?
it also demonstrates
can't you
we have a
copyright the
strong
idea?
taste, foreign taste. I mean, Ghanaians, we have a taste for foreign products and services. And it also reflects, I mean, maybe people don't believe that we can build these things. Look, I've built things, walked into certain places, and they ask, did you build this in Ghana?
In Ghana here.
I hear it all
All the time.
All the like, it doesn't make
We've
sense.
denied ourselves for so long that we
it's
don't
crazy.
believe.
Like they don't believe that something like this can be built in Ghana.
Wow.
But I mean, if this is just me and my company, my team, I know more than 30
Countless
other
other
people
guys.
who are doing crazy things that you won't find anywhere in the world. And it's I have a friend who built a ride-share app where if you're going somewhere, you just share the ride with other people and you pay less. And then Uber just released that feature. These guys were trying to launch this thing for a few years in Ghana, and they asked for a lot of support, a lot of help, and it didn't get it. And so, but when it comes out from any of these big external companies, people are like, wow, this is great. But like, I mean, we did this here many years ago.
And look at the irony about it.
Remarkable.
So now we ourselves, we don't believe in our own people.
Yep.
But the American investors out there, they
believe enough
in
to send money,
to send in
but
money,
leave the people.
and leave the people to run the company.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's crazy.
Yes,
I mean, it's happened. So you know the interesting thing about startups, right? When the investments are coming in, a lot of the terms are that you need to move your headquarters out of Ghana.
Right.
I mean, I'm just saying, maybe a lot of people don't know this, but those are the terms.
Why?
Because people want to put their money in a place where they feel that they have some maybe
Oversight control.
or they are familiar with the environment and a few things.
There's of course
and the thing is, the local companies don't have enough leverage to negotiate against that.
Right.
And say, look, let's build this thing here, let's do this thing here, because there isn't enough incentive to doing it here and being here. So we have the names of the companies. You say, oh, this is Ghanaian, but like when you go to the ownership, it's
not actually Ghanaian. And that's a really important in this time where we're moving from import to export driven, increasing local content, increasing Ghanaian ownership. It's really, really important that we look at that suite of policies. I know GIPC has a whole bunch of policies that leave us very open to external investment. And there's lots of different thoughts about how we should approach this. But considering we've chosen to pivot to export driven import substitution, we should also look at ownership. I have we've only got 5 minutes left, so one last sort of area, which is one of the things that might drive the choice to force a startup to leave the country is to try and get them to move to an area where there's an ecosystem of other technologies companies around, so they can share information and share and have access to sort of skills and workers, etc. What can Ghana do to increase its status? Because Nigeria and Kenya have kind of taken the mantle for African technology development. What does Ghana have to do to get our name up and get people looking at us as a a technology zone, a Silicon Valley of Accra or Paduasi Valley? I don't know what you can call it.
Yeah, I actually envision that area as a startup community. Right. So I wish Josiah was here. Josiah, they've been working on something called the Startup Act, and it has a lot of provisions that will make Ghana very competitive, especially in terms of the startup area. And startups are basically high growth, high skill companies that start small and then grow very fast. Yes. So with these kind of companies, we can even bring in foreign investments, or we can have these companies headquartered in Ghana, but operating in 15 other countries. And then all the revenue and the ownership comes here. And so this is the way we need to think about things. The Startup Act also features a certain portion of government technology contracts and things being given to startups, actually to strengthen them.
Actually drive through.
And then the tax framework. There's already one, like I said, fantastic one where if you're less than 35 years, if you're building a technology company and a few other categories as well, you can have a 5-year tax holiday. Right. But the process for actually assessing that is also complex. But that's another discussion for another day.
One way would be to insist that the companies are listed on the Ghana Alternative Stock Market, GACS. Once if a company is listed on a stock market, all right, GACS is actually run by the actual Ghana Stock Exchange anyway, but it's just for startup companies, small companies.
One would say that it's maybe too early. I mean, we've been having this discussion about listing on. A lot of the companies feel it's too early because, the company starts with a vision, which usually sits with the founders, and then they need some kind of control to determine a lot of things very fast. The kind of scrutiny and then, let me say, bureaucracy that comes with running a publicly traded company may slow the company down from actually reaching its potential in the early stages. Right. So,
isn't it still a better option than having to move out of Ghana?
So the ones that are bigger. So what we need to look at is crowdfunding regulation, and I know it's being worked on.
Right.
Let's say I need $10 million Ghana cedis. Let's speak in cedis. Yep. I need 10 million cedis for my business, and let's say 1 million Ghanaians can give me 10 CDs each, right? I hope the math is correct.
Yes,
so they all
10
go
times a
online and
million
then
is 10
they
million.
buy the shares, they just pay, and then they own a part of the company, right?
Yep.
And we have the capital. We need to look at crowdfunding because it's even part of our culture. In our communities, we
Yeah,
crowdfund
it is.
everything.
Yeah, it
But-
is.
School
but-
fees, we crowdfund everything. So we need to actually have the framework and accelerate it. And I know it's being worked
But
on.
you see,
so-
in Ghana, that's the issue. Say,
30 seconds.
in our typical Ghanaian business culture, the problem is this: the Bank of Ghana has come out with crowdfunding regulations for the past 2 years. Crowdfunding regulations came out of the Bank of Ghana, I think in 2020, for the debt side of crowdfunding. But the equity side,
Equity is
it still hasn't come. Security Exchange Commission has been working on it for the past 3 years. The SEC told me they were working on crowdfunding, the equity aspect of it, before Bank of Ghana came and announced that they have finished with the debt side.
Okay.
And they still have not come up with equity, which means that effectively, if somebody wants to use crowdfunding, the only option for you to go is debt.
Take that.
And I keep saying that already we are in a culture where we have over leveraged companies anyway. Somebody wants this $1 million Ghana cedis to start a business and he gets 100,000, he goes to borrow 900,000 at what
10x,
triple digit interest rates. Of course, that's why part of the reason why corporate mortality rate is so high.
Yeah.
So
More equity.
crowdfunding is a good way out. So please tell SEC to come up with the equity side
Right.
of crowdfunding. So we don't end up having young guys starting up companies and they believe in crowdfunding. And the lack of regulation pushes them into go and becoming over leveraged.
Yeah. Well, so often culture is driven by systems, and not so often. Always, culture is driven by systems, and not the other way around. So, thank you for that, gentlemen. All too soon, we've come to the end of another episode of Asaase Business Roundtable. We've been discussing digitalization, some of the Bank of Ghana's new FX policies. We've been doing this with editor and financial analyst Tomai Mire and Oswald Anonadaga, CEO of Floodgates Limited. It's been a pleasure. I've been Kweku Adeboli. Have a great weekend. Keep looking after each other. And we'll see you next week. Thank you for your time.